So, oh, is this live? We're live there. Okay, we'll pick this up.
I think it just went on like 6 seconds.
Yeah.
There's a microphone on.
Huh? Yeah, I got it. Maybe we could turn down the volume. Okay, we can.
This is my brother. Frisco. We're like 10 minutes away. Pretty close.
Do you guys want to visit in Dallas?
No, I'm from West Africa.
Oh,
Gambia. Students.
Oh, really?
no, not at all. Not at all.
See you with your notebook, bro.
No, it's the only way I remember.
It's true. That's how you guys do it.
So you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى يا أرحم الراحمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our intentions of coming here to learn knowledge of the deen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah in whatever it is that we learn, inshallah ta'ala. Give us the ability to do amal and act upon and implement whatever it is that we learn, inshallah ta'ala. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbak wa hubba man yuhibbuk wa hubba amalin yuqarribuna ila hubbika ya arhamar rahimin. Ya Allah, we ask you to give us your love. We ask you to give us the love of those actions that will gain your love. And we ask you, Ya Allah, to give us love of those people that you love, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So this is our third class. Third? It's our third class of Imam Muhasibi's Risala and Mustarshidin, a letter to those seeking guidance. Imam Muhasibi, mashallah, as we've been reading, he's giving throughout this text gems of wisdom for reflection and gaining deeper understanding of the deen. And because he's an early scholar, he writes very briefly. He doesn't do a lot of what we call basat in his writing. He writes very succinctly, right to the point. And so what that allows us to do is to unpack those statements a little more and to gain some deeper insight. So just to recap from what we covered in our last session, one of the things we talked about is that as we spiritually mature in Islam, one of the things that you start to focus on is your niyyah, intention. And so last week we talked about the importance of being cognizant, being constantly cognizant of the intent behind whatever it is that you're doing. Asking the why behind the action. And that's what he said. He says, فَابْحَثْ عَنِ النِّيَّةِ. He said, like, really, really look and discover what is your intention behind actions. What's the motivating thing? وَعَرِفَ الْإِرَادَاتِ. And discover and know and become familiar with the desires and the things that you want. What are you seeking through an action? فَإِنَّ الْمُجَازَاتِ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Because all reward is based on niyyah. Now, before we go on, there's a hadith, and I think I mentioned it last week, but perhaps I didn't mention it. I want to make sure we cover it. There's a prophetic narration of a man who lived a complete life of sin. Complete life of sin. I mean, there was no khair, no goodness that this man, in his knowledge, had done whatsoever. And when he was passing away, he gave wasiyah, or he left a bequest, like what should happen after me. And in that wasiyah, he said that I want you to take my body and I want you to cremate my body. And then I want you to take the ashes and spread them as far as you can, possibly. As far as you can. Now the Prophet ﷺ, he informed us that this man, when he stands before Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to this man, why did you do that? Like, that's not halal, you're not supposed to do that. Why did you do that? And his response will be, you know, I didn't do anything good at all. And I knew you were able to resurrect me, but I just wanted to spread my body as far apart as possible to make that resurrection even a little bit more harder than it possibly. That was my only thing was fear of you. And the fear, now this is what we stopped on last week. The action is a wrong action. But the intention behind it was motivated by his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this man Jannah for that action. Now that doesn't mean we can go out and do wrong actions and be like, well, my intention is good. Because that was ignorance that he had. But the reason I'm highlighting this is so that we see the importance of being people. Maulana Ali Hassan Nadwi, Shaykh Nadwi, he used to say that the problem in our time is not bad niyas. The problem today is no niyyah. You feel me? Like, we don't make bad intentions. Like, I'm going to the masjid to like show off, yo. Like, I'm going to the masjid for this. I'm going to do this for that. No, we just don't make niyyah. We fail to make niyyah. And so that's something I think I really wanted to focus on in our last session, is for us to be more cognizant about making intention. And then he continued, he said, وَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, all actions are going to be judged and assessed by the intentions, the motivating factor behind it. And what we said in our last session is, if you want to know what your intention is, the simplest way to understand what your intention is, it doesn't matter what you say. It's the thing that if you took it away, the action wouldn't happen. What is the thing that if you took it away, the action is not going to happen? That is what we mean when we say niyyah. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions will be based on and assessed based on the motivating factor behind them. So you got to check that. You got to be aware of that and cognizant of that. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ, and for every person is going to be whatever they intend. Now, that was all last week. Now we're moving on. So this is new. قال الإمام رحمه الله تعالى, the author, may Allah's mercy be upon him, he says, وَلْزَمْ تَقْوَى اللَّهِ. وَلْزَمْ تَقْوَى اللَّهِ. He says, hold on tightly, lazim, hold on tightly to taqwa of Allah. Now, taqwa is a term that we hear a lot, but it's important for us to unpack that term taqwa. Nowadays, the common translation, what's the common translation here for taqwa? Fear. So it started back in the 90s, it was like fear God, right? Fear God, fear God. And then all of a sudden we got a little woke. We got some nice Hamza Yusuf translations. You know what I mean? And then we came to the point where we started using the word a jadar, or a root, which comes from like qi, like protect. So taqwa does have this meaning of like protect yourself from something, right? And then we ended up saying, well, taqwa is a state of consciousness where you're always conscious. And you know where that translation actually came from? That translation, God consciousness, actually comes from a narration I've shared with you before about Umar ibn Khattab, how he defined taqwa. Do you remember that narration? Someone asked Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, explain to us what is taqwa. Like, explain it to us. It's like, what does it mean? And he gave this beautiful analogy, and it's one of the most profound analogies for taqwa. He says, have you ever walked on a thorny pathway where there's glass or something? Or a better analogy is, you remember when we had the snowstorm? It's all that ice. You know how it is to walk on ice. These brothers are from Maryland. They're like, yeah, man, we know ice. What y'all Texans know about ice? Well, we experienced ice this winter, alhamdulillah. So you know how it is to walk on ice, right? You watch your steps closely. Umar al-Khattab, he said, the definition of taqwa is when you lift up your toe, right? And then you just watch where every foot is placed so that nobody sees you slip. That's taqwa. And so if you take that definition, then the person that's walking in that manner, they're walking with this constant cognizance of the ice under their feet. Every time they lift up a foot, they think of the ice. Every time they place a foot, they think of the ice. So that is a very good definition of taqwa, which is God consciousness. And so he says, ilzam at-taqwa, like hold on to taqwa, make taqwa a part of who you are. And we're going to talk about taqwa as we move a little bit forward in today's lesson. Then he says something next. He says, فَإِنَّ الْمُسْلِمُ مَنْ سَلِمَ الْمُسْلِمُونَ مِنْ لِسَانِهِ وَيَدِهِ وَالْمُؤْمِنُ مَنْ أَمِنَ النَّاسُ وَوَعِقَهُ. He quotes a prophetic narration. He says, إِنَّ الْمُسْلِمُ, the true Muslim is the one who سَلِمَ الْمُسْلِمُونَ, other believers around him or her are protected from this person's tongue and their hands. Now, this is a well-known hadith. Well-known hadith. Al-Muslimu man salima al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. And there's many narrations of this. And I think we should go deeper into this hadith to kind of gain some understanding on a deeper level of this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ in this narration, there are three terms that he redefines. He redefines. The first one is Muslim. He says al-Muslim is this. And then the next word is al-Mu'min. He says al-Mu'min, the believer, is this. And then the last term he says, and it's not mentioned here, but I'll share it with you. He says wal-Muhajir, and the true migrant is this. And he explains them. So one of the things the Prophet ﷺ did a lot is he took concepts that people thought they understood and he redefined them sometimes for them. And so everyone in the room, if we're like, yo, what's a Muslim? You're like, yo, I'm Muslim, I know what Islam is. Everyone around the globe, like, I know what Islam is. Every Sahaba sitting with the Prophet ﷺ is like, I know what Islam is. But the Prophet ﷺ was like, no, hold on. Let me redefine Islam in a way so you can understand an important aspect of what it means to be a Muslim. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying that, okay, Islam, how do we normally look at it? Oh, it's submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he's like, no. One of the ways to look at you being a Muslim is to see if other people are safe from your harm. So like, are people around me, how do people around me assess me? Not just my la ilaha illallah, not just my salah, not just my hajj, not just my fast, none of those things. The way I'm assessing whether I'm Muslim or not based on this narration is when I walk in the house, when I go to school, when I go to work, do people feel safe from my lisan and my hand? So now there's two ways I want us to look at this hadith. Al-Muslimu man salima al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. The one is the societal impact of this. Let's talk about that first. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's training the Muslim society. And in fact, as we read more hadith today, you're going to see how this actually affects our society. And unfortunately, we've reached a point where, I mean, if we go on social media and see how we ridicule people, how we call people out, no regard for their honor, their names are open. We can say whatever we want about them. Or we just liked the post. I ain't saying nothing. I just liked it. I just liked it. I didn't even comment, yo. I didn't share. I just liked it. SubhanAllah. So there's a societal aspect to this, and I'm going to come back to this. But then there's a self-rectification aspect of this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ specifically mentions the tongue, and the harms of the tongue. I'm going to share a few narrations with you regarding the tongue. Imam Ghazali, he says this about the tongue. He says, "Khatrul lisan azim." The situation of the tongue is serious. Azim. The harm that can come from the tongue is azim. Wala najata illa bis-samt. He says, there's no safety from the tongue except through silence. And this is supported by a hadith. What's the hadith Rasul? Man samata najah. The Prophet ﷺ said the one who holds on to silence will be safe. Safe from what? A lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff. Abdullah bin Sufyan, he narrates from his father. Listen to this narration. He says, "Qala qultu ya Rasulullah." His father said, I was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ one day. I'm with the Prophet ﷺ, and I realized I had this opportunity to ask him a question. So I said, Ya Rasulullah, akhbirni anil Islam bi amarin la as'alu anhu ahadan ba'dak. Tell me something that I can ask you and I won't have to ask anyone after you. Meaning, like, he wants to get advice that he doesn't have to ask anyone after that. That's it. Like, I heard this, I'm good to go. I don't need all the podcasts. I don't need the next book when it's released. I just need this. I'm good to go. That's all I need. I'm good. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Qul amantu billah." Just say amantu billah, thumma istaqim. Then stay firm. Say you believe in God and stay firm. That's it. Now we're like, yo, that's deep. Staying firm, yo, that's tough. That's not easy. So then he said, "Thumma qultu fama attaqi." He says, okay, tell me, Ya Rasulullah, what should I be careful of? What should I protect myself from? The Rasul, this is crazy. The Rasul فَأَوْمَأَ بِيَدِهِ إِلَى لِسَانِهِ. The Prophet he didn't even say anything. He took his hand and he pointed to his tongue and he said this. This is the thing you got to be careful of. This is the thing you got to protect yourself. How does it trip up? One more narration before we go into the harms of the tongue. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala an, the Sahaba used to watch each other, yo. They used to watch each other, like how are they interacting with one another? What are they doing that they're not doing? Like they didn't want one Sahabi to get the edge. So they would always keep tabs on one another. So Umar ibn Khattab, once he saw Abu Bakr radiallahu an, he's sitting in the masjid and he's grabbing his tongue. He's grabbing his tongue. Now, if you go to the masjid, you see like the Imam in the corner, like grabbing you. It's like, what's going on, Imam? You all right? Everything's good? You know what I mean? So Umar ibn Khattab, he's like, what are you doing? He literally just like, yo, what are you doing? And Abu Bakr, he said, Hada awradani mawarid. He says, this thing right here has taken me on a journey. This thing right here has taken me on a journey. What kind of journey? Yo, depending on where you grew up, you learn quick to protect your tongue. You learn quick that your tongue can get you in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. I'll tell y'all a story. Back in my grammar school days, I'm sure y'all got some stories of how your tongue got you in trouble.
Yep.
Sana be like, she throwing down in public school, man. So there was a you know, in grammar school, like it's a big deal if there's a fight after school. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Okay, cool. So there was this about to go down, right? There was this one kid. I even remember the names, man. I don't know what. Elliot, okay? Elliot was gonna fight Terry Bates, okay? I hope these dudes don't follow me on Instagram or whatever. So I remember, like, yo, this was the big deal. Like, yo, they're about to brawl after. And everybody's hyping it up. You know, after school, we're going to go see. And we all kind of knew Terry Bates was going to smash Elliot, right? We all kind of knew that, right? And I'm young, man. When I was always a small guy, right? Always the smallest dude in the group, right? And so I'm hyping it up too, like, yo, it's about to go down, right? And sure enough, everyone walks out to the courtyard after school. We all there, right? We're watching the thing, and it's 30 seconds. The fight is over. What's the people that walk you across the street? What do they call it? Crossguard. She comes. She's like, no, she's African American, so she's like everybody's mom, right? So she's like, no, what y'all doing? This ain't going down. She stops the fight, but he had already beat him. So I think everything's good. Let's go to school the next day. Next day in school, I walk in and everybody's looking at me. I'm like, why is everybody staring at me? Finally, someone pulls me over. They're like, Elliot wants to fight you today. I'm like, what did I do, yo? He said that you were yapping your mouth too much. You were yapping your mouth too much. Man, I ain't studied nothing that whole day. There was no, I ain't gonna tell you how the story ended. That's it. I'm gonna keep my record flawless. But the point is, Imam Shafi has a very beautiful poem. He says, how many dead people are in the graveyard right now because of their tongue? Seriously. How many dead people are in the graveyard right now because of their tongue? How many divorces ruined because of a tongue? How many hearts broken because of a tongue? How many lives destroyed? Imam Shafi, he says, the jurh, the cut of a sword will heal, but the cut from a tongue never heals, man. You can't unhear something that someone says. They say it one time, and later they're like, I was just joking. You're like, yeah, I know. You walk away, you're like, no, I ain't joking. That's how he really feels about it. It's always there. So the tongue is very, it's really interesting that the Prophet ﷺ highlights that if you're a Muslim, you have to make sure you're on guard against this tongue. You're protecting what you're saying. Because it's so, Ibn Abdullah bin Mas'ud, he says, if there's anything in this dunya that deserves to be put in jail for a long time, it's the lisan. It's the tongue. SubhanAllah. So why is it so dangerous? Why is the Prophet highlighting it? And why is Imam Muhasibi emphasizing the lisan? Because number one, the trouble it gets us in. And number two, here's something else. The excessive use of the tongue, and I'm going to go back into the trouble, but the excessive use of the tongue also forces us to miss out on a lot of good that we could have obtained. I mean, the good from reflection, the good from contemplation, reading, learning from people. When you're talking, you're not learning. And so there's a lot of good that's missed out when we don't practice upon this. Let's go a little deeper. What are some of the troubles that lie? Imam Ghazali has written over 20 negative or troubles that the tongue can place us in. I'm only mentioning 5 of them. Number 1, kidhb, lies. Lies. Right? We had so many ahadith that talk about the effect of lying on the heart and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2, backbiting. Dangerous disease. And all of these things are actually symptoms of a deeper spiritual disease. Like backbiting isn't the problem. Backbiting is a symptom of the actual problem in the heart. And backbiting just shows that the heart is sick. It's like somebody has a cough, you're like, yo, you all right? Same way someone backbites, you're like, you all right, bro? Sister, you good? You're backbiting a lot there. You might want to put a mask on. You put a mask on, yo, you're backbiting a bit. That's how we should look at it. But unfortunately, we'd be like, word. So backbiting is dangerous. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I mean, we could spend the whole evening discussing the hadith that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam spoke about backbiting. And Imam Ghazali says backbiting isn't just what you say, it's the backbiting you do in your heart too. Right now, like the backbiting, you look around the room and you start backbiting people in your head. Astaghfirullah. That's where it begins. Number 2, he says al-mirar. Mirar. Mirar is like argumentation, disputing with people. Like one of the problems of the problems of the tongue is constant argumentation. The Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in one hadith, he said, "La tumar akhaka." Don't argue with your brother or sister. Don't argue. There's a beautiful, beautiful hadith. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that من ترك المرار وهو محق بنى الله له بيت في ربض الجنة. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the one who gives up argumentation, وهو محق. What does محق mean? He's right. She's right. You know you're right, but you give up argumentation. No, I'm good. Honey, you're right. She ain't here today. So, yes, you are right. The Prophet said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala builds a special house for this person in the outskirts of Jannah. Amazing. Next is indecent speech. Like the list is, there's a long list of the harms of the tongue. And the fact is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's teaching us here that no, a sign that you're a Muslim is you learn how. And here's the deal. The sign is not when you're chilling, but when you're in a difficult situation. That's where the tongue really comes out. Right now, everyone's good, everyone's happy, everyone's good. When things get difficult, when someone rubs you the wrong way, when your mother, your family member rubs you wrong, that's where the reality of the tongue comes out at that time. And that's where it's all about controlling the self. So Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what does he say in this hadith? He says, Al-Muslimu man salima al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. The sign that you're a true believer is that your tongue, people feel safe, I'm good. Wal-mu'min man amina. Here's the second part of the hadith now. Wal-mu'min. Now we're looking at a new word. What was the first word? Muslim. What's a Muslim? Someone who submits. What's a mu'min? Oh, someone of faith, someone of iman. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, wal-mu'min, the true mu'min, is the one, man amina nas bawa'iqahu, is the person who other people are protected from the evil inside of that person. Now, this is an interesting concept. What we're learning in this hadith is that within each and every one of us, is this potential for khair and this potential for shar. And the Prophet ﷺ is teaching, there's another hadith, and the words of it don't come to my mind exactly, but I'm going to share part of it with you. There was this one Sahabi, he keeps asking the Prophet ﷺ, like, tell me a good deed. And the Prophet ﷺ starts listing this list. And then he's like, tell me another. He says another. He says, tell me another. He goes through like 4 or 5 things. At the bottom, he's like, what if I can't do that? The Prophet, the final thing he says, if you can't do any of these things, just protect the people from your harm. Like, look at the harm you can cause people and just protect people from that. That's it. If you do that, you're good to go. Protect people from the harm inside of you. And so, you know how in the khutbah you hear, min shururi anfusina, we ask Allah to protect us from the evil that is within us? That's what this hadith is saying. This hadith is like, I'm looking for the evil in me. I'm aware of the evil in me, and I'm constantly protecting people. It's funny. Like, this week I had a bit of a cold, right? I ain't got COVID. I already took my vaccine. I had a bit of a cold ever since the last halaqah. And I'm rocking my mask, right? But now I'm rocking my mask, kind of a different intention. Bawa'iqihi. Now I ain't worried about catching nothing from you. I'm trying to protect you from me. You know what I mean? Like, I had a whole different way of looking at interaction with people, where I was constantly like, let me mask up and protect people. And that's what this hadith is saying, is that you're now constantly cognitive of how am I going to negatively, affect people, and I'm protecting people from that. Qala Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, let's continue. Ittaqillah bita'atihi. Have consciousness of God through his obedience. وَأَتِي اللَّهَ بِتَقْوَاهُ, and obey Allah through God consciousness. This is really interesting. Imam Al-Muhasibi, rahimahullah ta'ala, look what he says here. Imam Al-Muhasibi, he says, Ittaqillah, have consciousness of God through the ibadah, through his obedience. As if to say, the obedience is the means to God consciousness. You feel me? Let me say that one more time. Ittaqillah bita'atihi. have consciousness of God. Remember the word taqwa, we talked about it before, and I said we would revisit it. Now we're revisiting it. Ittaqillah, have taqwa of God, consciousness of God, bi ta'atihi, through his obedience. Now this is deep. What this tells us is that don't think you can get to this really deep spiritual level and have no actions to back it up. Like a lot of time when we get into this really, really spiritual talks about have a good heart, have good intention, shukr, gratitude, kibr, all of it's like, oh, how do I feel? What is my heart? And that's good, as long as the actions are there too. You feel what I'm saying? So have taqwa through the obedience. Like you can't be like, I'm a muttaqi and like, I don't pray for you. What? Sleeping through is different. But like, no, I don't pray. What are you talking about? That's not taqwa then. That's your own definition of taqwa, but that's not the taqwa of the Rasul. So I said that. Does it make sense? But then look what he says next. So it's as if the obedience is the means for taqwa, right? But look what his next statement is. He says, وَأَتِلَّهَ بِتَقْوَاهُ, and obey God through consciousness of God. The exact opposite. The exact opposite. He says now, don't focus only on, you know how sometimes it can be the exact opposite, where this person is only focused on actions? They're like a robot when it comes to obedience. They just do the actions. But the feeling, the taqwa, the heart is not alive at all. He's saying these are two extremes we want to avoid. So don't think obedience without an aware heart is what you want, and don't think an aware heart without obedience. Both of these must go together. Does that make sense? It's very beautiful how he put that together. Okay. Any questions on that one? I need to take a sip of water. So, have taqwa through obedience. How did we explain that? You need the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to truly reach the level of consciousness of God. وَأَتِلَّهُ بِتَقْوَاهُ, and obey God through God consciousness. Like, make that heart aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the obedience of God. Now look what he says next. And this is what I was talking about, the honor of a Muslim. Nowadays with cancel culture, man, the honor of a Muslim is like cheap, yo. It's cheap. It's a post, it's nothing, it's a like, it's attention. It's nothing. Look what he says, وَكُفْ يَدَكَ عَنْ دِمَاءِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Protect your hand from the blood of other Muslims. Don't harm nobody. Don't harm another Muslim. وَبَطَنَكَ عَنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. And don't protect your stomach from their wealth. What he's saying here is, in the Quran, there's this verbiage of تَأْكُلُ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتِيمِ, to eat the wealth of an orphan, for example. And what this means is normally, if you take money from somewhere, you primarily use that to feed yourself. So it's actually a metaphor, so to speak, for using someone else's wealth without unjustly. So he says, and protect your stomach from consuming the wealth of other people. And this is something, unfortunately, the Muslim community, we have to be very conscious of other people's wealth, man. Like, you find people, they pray, they do all this stuff, but when it comes to cheating someone, getting ahead, no problem whatsoever. Astaghfirullah. You have to be conscious of that. That's haram wealth, man. And that's what he's reminding us. And then he says, وَلِسَانَكَ عَنْ أَعْرَاضِهِمْ, and protect your tongue from their honor, from their name. Listen, within Islam, there are 5 things that are considered always protected. Always protected. What are they? One's wealth. Islam is like the whole deen is to protect these things. One's iman, one's religion, one's life, one's wealth. What's next? One's lineage and one's honor. All of the rulings of Sharia are to protect these 5 things: religion, life, wealth, lineage, and honor. What that means is a person's honor is sacred. What happened here? Okay, we're good. A person's honor is sacred. Very nowadays, and this has become a major problem because social media has just made it not a big deal to scroll past, see slander, see lies, see accusations, and we just sit there eating it up like it's all good. Surah An-Nur is a surah that specifically speaks about how to deal with scandals in the community. We really should study Surah An-Nur. Now, this doesn't mean we empower wrongs, we allow wrongs. People in control, people in positions should definitely correct wrongs. I'm talking about for me and you, my heart. Why am I sitting there liking that? Why am I sitting there gobbling all that up, just going straight through the comments with my drinking my tea with my popcorn, going through the comments? Feel me? Who may know, it's just what I'm talking about. So it's important, man. It's really important for us to understand the honor of another Muslim is something that is sacred. Hajjatul Wida, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, final khutbah, he speaks about this right here, that the honor of another, the name, the respect of another Muslim is sacred. Never, ever, ever sell that cheap. Okay, so now Imam Al-Muhasibi moves to a new topic. And this is actually what I want to spend the rest of today's class focused on. Imam Al-Muhasibi, he says, and here's his words, he says, وَحَاسِبْ نَفْسَكَ فِي كُلِّ خَطْرَةٍ. He says, and hasib, take yourself to account. Be aware, be accountable, hasib, look at yourself, fi kulli khatra, in every thought that comes to you. So, you guys know, like you hear, oh, there's a khatra after salah. Khatra, that's how we hear that word, khatra. It comes from, khatra means khatra ala balihi, like khatra, it just came to their mind. So the word khatra actually just means a thought. And one of the topics we've talked about in our previous halaqat, it's been 2 years now, mashallah, is that early scholars, when they talk about changing behavior, they didn't start with the behavior, like CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy. We don't focus on the behavior, because the behavior is actually the result of a faulty thinking. There's something you're thinking wrong that has to be addressed. And what's amazing is that our scholars in Islamic tradition have always focused on, if you want to control behavior, you must start with thinking. And if you are relaxed about controlling thoughts and letting thoughts go wherever you want them, they want to go, you'll never be able to control behavior. It's a very important part of our Islamic teaching. And it's even harder today. You know why? Nowadays, it's an attention economy. Attention economy. What does that mean? That means every app that they want you on is free. Why? Because what is really being sold and what really can be monetized is what? Your attention. What you're focused on. And if you think about it, our language even communicates that. We say pay attention. Pay attention. That means it's a resource that's finite. And your attention can't be on me right now and somewhere else. Whenever you put your attention somewhere, you are making a cognitive decision, whether you realize it or not, to focus on one thing and not focus on another thing. And I think so nowadays, more than ever, we have become used to not controlling our thoughts as we scroll, because by definition, as I scroll, whatever I see next is what I think about. That's it. And I have no control over what comes next. Very little control over what comes next. So I think it's important. There was one saying, when information is wealthy, attention is scarce. When information is abundant, attention is scarce. And that's really scary to me, because nowadays, I don't know about you, but it's so hard to focus these days, yo. It's so hard to concentrate, to stay on one task and just be on it, without feeling this urge to divert my attention somewhere, something pinging me or vibrating on me, pulling my attention somewhere else. So I think it's really important for us to think about this topic of controlling thoughts as a part of our spiritual development. So let's go deeper into this. We're going to unpack this. This is all we're going to talk about for the rest of the class, because this is so important for behavioral modification. Controlling thoughts and what you allow yourself to think on or think about. So Abu Talib al-Makki, he wrote a book called Qut al-Qulub. Qut al-Qulub. It means nourishment for the heart, or the provisions for one's heart. It's an amazing book. It's an early book. It was actually like around the same time as this book being written. And he says that scholars, and this is at his time, have divided the different types of thoughts into various classifications. This is beautiful stuff. ذُكِرَ تَقْسِيمُ الْخَوَاطِرِ وَتَفْصِيلِ أَسْمَائِهَا. They mention the categorizations of different thoughts and what are the names of those different thoughts. So he says all of these are considered khawatir, or thoughts, but let's look at them. He says number one, the word in Arabic is ilham. Ilham. It's kind of like inspiration. So alhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha, wa alhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha. Ilham is a type of inspiration. Now, how does he define it? He says, excuse me, فَمَا وَقَعَ فِي الْقَلْبِ مِنْ عَمَلِ الْخَيْرِ. Whatever comes to your heart from good actions, this is the first category of ilham. Now, this actually comes from a hadith. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in one hadith, he says, إِنَّ لِلشَّيْطَانِ لَمَّةٌ or limmatun, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَكَ لِمَّةٌ. There is a limma or a lemma of the devil, a touch of the devil, and there's also a limma or a lemma of the angels. And the Prophet ﷺ says, whenever you feel a touch of an angel, now, how do I know I got touched? The chills or something? Like, how do I? The Prophet ﷺ said, no, it's the thought of khair that comes to you. It's the thought of goodness that comes to you. It just comes. You're like, whoa, that was nice. Good job, Mikaeel. You're becoming a good human being. You're becoming a good Muslim. You just thought something good. No. That was your angel looking out for you, bro. Like, yo, you're a loser. Come on. Why don't we do something? I'm getting bored here. I need something good to write down. So lamma is that thought that comes. Now the Prophet ﷺ said, whenever that thought comes, first thing you do is what? What's the first thing? Take a guess. No, before you act on it. I'm so sorry. Before you act on it, thank Allah. فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ. The first thing you do is you thank Allah. Alhamdulillah. Keep it coming. You know what I mean? Like, I may not get a chance to act on it. My nafs may overtake me. But the first thing I'm doing is like, Alhamdulillah, that was a nice thought. Alhamdulillah. Beautiful idea. And then he goes forward that we should act on it. So the first type is called ilham, and these are the good thoughts that come to us. Number two, ما وقع في القلب من عمل الشر. The thoughts that come to the self of evil actions. And he calls this, number two, waswas, or satanic intonation, satanic whispers, waswas. Waswas. Now, I'm going to break off and give you my own breakdown of something really quick. Sometimes the evil comes from the nafs, or the lower self. Now let me break this down. This is extremely important to understand. Anyone ever seen a toddler, 3 years old, maybe 2, right? Brother, son, or sibling, right? That little dude is the nafs. Pure. If you ever want to do like a case study on Islamic understanding of nafs, just take a 2-year-old or 3-year-old and just analyze their behavior. Why do I say that? This little guy only wants what they enjoy, and they dislike what doesn't go with them. And they will do whatever it takes to get it. Why? Are they evil? No. They just know this thing feels good, tastes good, I like it, and I want it. And anything stopping me from that is in my way. So the nafs isn't per se evil. But when left unchecked, it leads to an evil soul. You feel me? You're a bad parent. Why did you let this dude just become a little like tyrant? That's your nafs. You feel me? So the idea is that the nafs isn't evil per se. Left unchecked, you allow it to become this evil tyrant. That's all it is. So this is waswas. So that was number 2. And as a segue, not segue, but like as a digression, we said that waswas can also be broken down to kind of this whisper of the lower self as well. But again, it's not evil per se. It's not evil per se. Number 3. He says, وَمَا كَانَ مِن تَقْدِيرِ الْخَيْرِ وَتَعْمِيلِهِ فَهُوَ النِّيَّةِ. Whatever thoughts you have of good, he calls these niyyah, intention. He calls them niyyah or intention. And then, last one, well, no, there's quite a few more actually. وَمَا كَانَ مِن تَدْبِيرِ الْأُمُورِ الْمُبَاحَةِ. He says, whatever are from amongst the things that are neither good nor bad, you just want to do them. You want a new car, you want to go eat, you want to go do this. All of these things that are neither good nor bad, you just desire them. He calls these, the Arabic word is umniya, which is just a desire, something I want. Umniya, something I wish for, I want it. Next one. وَمَا وَقَعَ مِن تَذْكِيرَةِ الْآخِرَةِ. The thoughts that come regarding remembering the akhirah, remembering the promise of Jannah, remembering the threat of hell. He calls these tadhakkur, reminders, tadhakkur, or tafakkur. وَمَا كَانَ مِن مَعَايَنَةِ الْغَيْبِ بِعَيْنِ الْيَقِينِ فَهُوَ مُشَاهَدَةٌ. This is on some deeper Sufi stuff here, so just bear with me. He goes, whenever you have a moment of clairvoyance. By clairvoyance, what we mean is when it's as if you see the reality of the ghaib. All right, Mikaeel, what are you talking about? Okay. There's one Sahabi. He meets the Prophet ﷺ walking through the streets of Medina. He's just walking through the streets of Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ stops him. And he's like, how are you doing? Kayfa asbahta? How are you this morning? He says, asbahtu mu'minan haqqan. I wake up today as a true mu'min, haqqan. Like you're speaking to the Prophet ﷺ. Like you understand the, like, not audacity, but you understand like the firmness in that statement, right? You're saying to the Prophet, I woke up today as a mu'min, haqqan, like a true believer. The Prophet ﷺ said, لِكُلِّ قَوْلٍ حَقِيقَةٍ. Every word, words are cheap. Every word has a reality. فَمَا حَقِيقَةُ قَوْلِكَ. What's the reality of your statement? You said it, now what's the reality of it? He said, when I walk around, it's as if I can see the people of Jannah already going around in Jannah. And at the same time, I feel like I can see, I'm seeing the people of hellfire in Jannah. I'm seeing that. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Arafta, Falzam. He's like, you got it, man. Just hold on now. Like you reached, just hold it now. That's it. Just hold it. One more example of mushahada, just so you get what I'm saying by this word mushahada. Hanzala. This is a well-known incident. Hanzala radiallahu ta'ala an. Hanzala radiallahu ta'ala an. One day, he's walking through the city of Medina. He's walking through the city of Medina, and he's like, Nafaqa Hanzala, Nafaqa Hanzala. Qibla's the other one. Qibla's the other one. Tell the brother Qibla the other one. He's like, Nafaqa Hanzala, Nafaqa Hanzala. That Hanzala has become a munafiq. Hanzala has become a hypocrite. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, it's a well-known hadith. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu ta'ala an, he sees him and he's like, yo, what are you saying? Those are heavy words. You can't just walk around saying, I'm a hypocrite, I'm a hypocrite, I'm a hypocrite. Why are you saying that? And he says, no, let me explain to you. And pay attention. Pay attention. This is heavy. He says, when I'm with the Prophet ﷺ, he said, when I'm with the Prophet ﷺ and he's talking to us, I swear I can see Jannah right in front of me. It's like it's literally right there. It's right in front of me. But then when I go home, I play with Maria, Karima, Qasim, I play with my children. He's like, I forget everything. I can't see that reality anymore. So for him, this is the key. For him, it was as if these things became so clear that he was living life and actually like seeing them for moments. And so that's what the word mushahada means. It means to witness. It means to witness. There are some people who this iman reaches so deep that it's like clear as day to them. They're witnessing these realities, and that's what this means. So I don't know, what number of thought was that? What number was that? 6, number 6? Okay, the next one. Number 7. وَمَا كَانَ مِن تَحَدَّثِ النَّفْسِ. Whatever comes from the nafs, whatever comes from that little toddler inside, right? Whatever comes from the nafs, بِمَعَاشِهَا وَتَعْرِيفِ أَحْوَالِهَا فَهُوَ هَمْ. He's like, whatever comes from the nafs, we call this ham, or worry is the way we translate the word ham. Concern or worry from the... And then he says, وَمَا كَانَ مِنْ خَوَاطِرِ الْعَادَاتِ وَنَوَازِعِ الشَّهَوَاتِ فَهُوَ لَمَمٌ وَيُسَمَّى جَمِيعُ ذَلِكَ الْخَوَاطِرِ. He says, any other thoughts that are the pulling of the desires, we call these lamamun. These are, and this is the same word we used earlier in the hadith I shared with you. We call these lamam, or like pulls towards the desires. So here Abu Talib al-Makki, all he does in this part here, he's trying to get us to see the different types of thoughts. Now, I also want to share with you Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi rahimahullah ta'ala's statement on the importance of controlling thoughts. Now, this is something we studied about 2 years ago together, but it'll be a great reminder. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi rahimahullah ta'ala, he said something absolutely profound. He said that the way that Allah has created the human mind is that it's like a mill. You remember this example? It's like a mill that you use to like grind wheat into flour. And so he says the way that the mill works is that it never stops. You are awake, you're asleep, your mind is always going. And whatever you put into it are the things that are going to be coming out of that mill. If you put good things into it, then you'll get flour out of it. If you put garbage into it, then you're going to get garbage out of it. That's the reality of it. So he said, instead of trying to stop thinking about things, instead of trying to stop thoughts, he said, only focus on constantly bringing in good thoughts to it. Constantly bringing good thoughts into it. I read an article recently on the cognitive effect of savoring on happiness. Now, this is going to sound weird because some of us already know this, but some of us don't do this enough, and I think this will help a lot of us in our mental health. So this article, this study basically showed, you know, sometimes these studies, they be all deep, but at the end of the day, they just say some basic stuff. You feel me? You be like, yeah, my mom told me that, yo. Like, why did y'all need so much money on that study, man? Like, my moms knew that already, man. So what does it mean to savor something? It means for you to think over that thing, to like enjoy it. You know how some people, like, you give them like a nice steak or brisket, they just eat it quick. You like, yo, chill, we in Texas, you savor that joint right there. That's brisket right there. Yo, Minnesota, y'all have brisket yet? Oh man, y'all doing in Texas ain't have brisket yet, yo. We got y'all, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. These are some of the youth from Minnesota, mashallah, on a retreat. They go around different places. Alhamdulillah, they came to Dallas to visit. That's why they roll so deep, right? Mashallah. Alhamdulillah. So they take time out to go visit shuyukh, go different places, mashallah, and build community, mashallah. May Allah reward them, inshallah. Make sure you spend time to know them, inshallah, after the halaqah is over, inshallah. Oh, man. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Okay, so, Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad. So Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, we were talking about, yes?
Could you repeat the numbers one more time from the beginning? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
I lost count.
Do you want to go back through the thoughts?
No, just the categories. When you said 7, it was 6 on my notes.
So I think it was 6. Yeah, it was 6.
Would you be able to name the
7?
Okay, let's go through them, inshallah. So we were talking about the different thoughts. And this is Abu Talib al-Makki's breakdown of thoughts. Now, I will say this. Different scholars have broken down thoughts in different ways. The one thing I think we can take from all of that is the emphasis, the heavy emphasis that was placed on recognizing where thoughts came from for behavior modification. Until you start checking your thoughts, until you're cognizant of what you're thinking of, you'll never be able to modify the behavior. But let's go through them, inshallah. Number 1 was called ilham, or inspiration. These were the thoughts of good that come from angels and so on. Number 2 was waswas, a type of whisper that comes from shaitan towards evil. And then we gave another type of whisper, which was similar, which was from the nafs as well. That we didn't give a name for that one, similar to waswas. So that could be your number 3. Then number 4 was what he called niyyah, or intention, which was the thoughts of doing good that come to the heart. He says, kana min taqdeer al-khair, like you start to plot good. One is the thought that came. The second is the plotting, like how am I going to do this? That's niyyah. And then the next one, he says, your thoughts about just basic things of, you know, what I'm going to eat, where I'm going to go, these things of mubahat, he called these umniya, or what was the word we used for these? Desire. That was umniya is a hard word to translate. Umniya is kind of hopes as well. Hopes. The next one is thoughts of the hereafter, where you start thinking of Jannah, you start thinking of Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is called tadakkur. Tadakkur. Then the next one, what number am I on? 7. The next one was called mushahada. And I gave examples of mushahada of Sahaba, who for them, it was like they were seeing the akhirah. It was visible before them. These moments of clairvoyance that they experienced were no joke. They were real, and these were called mushahada. The next one was the nafs concerned with its own worldly living instability. We call this concern or worry. And then that last one, the pull of the desire, this was called lamma as well. This was called, this was called lamma. Lamma is kind of like a pull. So Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala, what does he say about negative thoughts? This is very important. Listen to this as closely as you've listened to anything we've said today. And we're going to end with this. He says, dafi al-khatra. You got to control your thinking. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ. If you don't control thoughts that come to your mind, صَارَتْ شَهْوَةً. Those thoughts will become desires. Now this is important, because once a thought comes, there's no sin there. But once you start playing with a thought, and you're like, yeah, now you're getting sin, man. Now you got problems, yo. You gotta be careful. So he says, dafa al-khatarat, like push away thoughts. Don't let your mind go there. Why? Because if you don't, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ صَارَتْ شَهْوَةً فَحَارِبْهَا. Fight it, yo. Fight it. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْهَا. Fight the shahawat. Fight the desire. Stage 2. Fight the desire. Why? فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ صَارَتْ عَزِيمَةً وَإِمَّةً. First stage, the thought came. He said, fight it. If you don't, it becomes a shahwa, a desire. Cool? Now he says, we're talking about shahwa now. He says, fight against this. You feel the desire for something, fight it. Push against it. Push back. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ. If you don't push back, صَارَتْ عَزِيمَةً. Go up a little. Azima is now when you're like, I'm doing this. You start plotting, how am I going to do it? It's azima. It means like, I'm going to do it now. فَإِن لَمْ تَدَافَعْهَا صَارَتْ فِعْلًا. And if you don't stop your azaim, your firm resolutions, if you don't stop those, صَارَتْ فِعْلًا, then you end up doing the action. It's not over yet though. صَارَتْ فِعْلًا. He says, فَإِن لَمْ تَتَدَارَكَهُ بِضِدِّهِ. If you don't go against it with the opposite, go against the action with the opposite of it. What does that mean? Your nafs is telling you to be stingy. Now, don't give this person nothing. What do? Give them. Make dua for the person. Do the exact opposite. Some of your nafs tell you to backbite someone. You go up to somebody, yo, that person's amazing, man. The nafs is going to be hot, yo. The nafs is going to be like, man, what did you just do? But he says, if you don't do that, صارت عادة. If you don't go against the action, it becomes a habit. Listen, habits are so hard to break. Listen, some of us have a nature, genetically or based on environment, or epigenetics, both of them, we are more susceptible to addictions. Some of us are far more susceptible to addictions than others. It's very important for you to be careful of forming habits because breaking them is hard. And what he just taught us right now is the method. You want to break the habit, look, when a tree is grown, now I got to call out the people to saw the joint down, then get the root out. Just take it out when it's a seed. Don't put the seed. Don't put the seed. But now you got to call the imam and the psychologist and the therapist and the social worker. Why? Because you let it grow to a tree, man. It's going to fall on your house. For real. The problem is the seed. You should not have let the seed sit there. You should not have let the seed sit there. So it's extremely, extremely, extremely important to pay attention to what he's saying. Look what he says next. He says, وَعْلَمْ, no. I'm sorry. وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَبْدَأْ كُلَّ عِلْمٍ اِخْتِيَارٍ هُوَ خَوَاطِرٍ. The beginning of every action that you voluntarily do is your thoughts. فَإِنَّهَا تُوجِبُ تَصَوُّرَاتٍ. Because your thoughts cause the mental depiction of that thing. The mental image is formed. وَتَصَوُّرَاتٍ تَدْعُو إِلَى إِرَادَاتٍ. And the mental image cause your desire towards that thing. وَالْإِرَادَاتِ تَقْتَدِي وُقُوعِ الْفَعْلِ. And the firm desire now makes you more likely to do the action. وَكَثْرَةِ التَّكْرَارِ تُؤْتِي الْعَادَةِ. And the more you do the action, now it becomes a habit. You become addicted. You're stuck. You can't stop doing the action. فَصَلَاحُ هَذِهِ الْمَرَاتِبِ. If you want to cure everything, بِصَلَاحِ الْخَوَاطِرِ. You just got to fix the thoughts. You just got to fix the thoughts. Don't let your mind focus. Don't let those bad thoughts come. The moment they come, you push back with the opposite of it. You keep pushing back against those thoughts. And I think that's good enough for here, inshallah ta'ala. Last thing, sorry. He says, وَمَعْلُومٌ. And it is understood. This is about understanding human psychology from Islamic perspective. This is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi. Say me, this is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi. He says, وَمَعْلُومٌ أَنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَمْ يُؤْتَ إِمَاتَةَ الْخَوَاطِرِ. Human beings do not have the ability to stop thinking. You cannot إِمَاتَةَ الْخَوَاطِرِ. You can't stop thinking. وَلَا قُوَّةَ عَلَى قَطْعِهَا. You can't cut off thought. فَإِنَّهَا تَهْجُمُ عَلَيْهِ هُجُومَ النَّفْسِ. Thoughts just attack you. Boom. You're like, oh, shoot, where'd that come from? Astaghfirullah. They just come. Hujum. Hajama. And he says, إِلَّا أَنَّ قُوَّةَ الْإِيمَانِ وَالْعَقْلِ تُعِينُهُ. But the aql, your intellect, and your faith tells you, he says, it tells you, عَلَى قُبُولِ أَحْسَنِهَا وَرِضَاهُ بِهِ وَمَسَاكِنَتِهِ لَهُ وَعَلَى دَفْعِ أَقْبَحِهَا. He says, but your aql and your faith What they inform you are what thoughts to allow to come in and what thoughts to be like, yo, get out of here. What are you doing here? You ain't even allowed up in here. This heart is for Allah. Why are you here? What does that? Again, what did he say does that for us? Your own intellect will be like, that's a bad thought, Mikaeel. Stop. And what's the second thing? Your faith, your iman, your deen. Your deen like, yo, what do you think about stuff for Allah? This is golden advice. Because it's not about cutting them, it's about rejecting them. You can't cut them, but you can reject them when they come and be like, astaghfirullah, put your mind somewhere else. So what your mom always say, man? I don't mind? No? Muslim moms don't say that? Huh? Makar? You heard it before? I don't mind is the devil's workshop?
I've heard that before.
Yeah. Maybe it's my old Christianity stuff. My bad. But I think it applies to Islam as well, man. If you let the mind just go wherever it is, and that's why I said, I prefaced right before y'all came in, I prefaced this discussion on the attention economy. Because until we start being more deliberate about where we put our attention, we'll never have the ability to control our own thinking. I'm going to say that again. We really have to understand this. Until you are more deliberate and intentional about what you allow yourself to see, and where you put your attention, you'll never be able to control your thoughts. Even when you close the app, it takes another 3 minutes just to bring your mind to the present occupation. There's a lag between what you were last doing and what you're doing now. And that's why I said right before y'all came in, if the app is free, you are what's being sold, man. If the app is free, you are the commodity, man. You are the commodity, simple as that. And so be very, very, very deliberate about where you allow your attention to go. And what you allow to grab your attention and what you allow yourself to focus on. If you don't, you'll never even be anywhere near being able to control what you think about. Because what do you mean? I can look at whatever I want. I still control my thoughts. No, you won't. Because the things that you look at are the things that bring the thoughts. And you scroll at random. Your scrolling is random. Your thoughts are not going to be random? Scattered all over the place? Of course they are. So again, attention economy. You got to look at attention as you look at money. I don't give my money away to people, yo. The same way I don't give my attention away to places that don't give me back some dividends or something. Attention economy means focus on your attention and focus the same way you focus on your money. Yes, Dimple.
I think scrolling is actually worse than like having scattered thoughts because they, like big data is such a huge thing that they direct your thoughts.
SubhanAllah. Sister Dimple, she's like, scrolling is actually worse. Say that one more time louder if you don't mind.
Big data is such a huge thing that not only are they're not giving you random stuff, they're controlling your, they're directing your thoughts. Yeah, so algorithms aren't even random. It's like you were talking about Michael Kors bag all day, so now that's what you're gonna be seeing, yo. Like this is you're being like fished. You know what I mean? Like this is not random at all. You are being targeted in those things. And so it's not at random. It's really controlled. And the unfortunate thing is we go to sleep with it, we wake up straight to it, man. And there has to be a moment where we break this cycle. I need control over my mind. I need to think what I want to think about. Oh, I'm going to miss out on stuff. I'm not going to see the latest snap or reel or what. I don't even know what they're called no more. Again, attention is money. Attention is money because attention is time. Hold up, hear me out. Attention is money because whatever attention I give Qasim, that's time that can't go nowhere else. Qasim is my son. Whatever attention I give Qasim, that can't go nowhere else, right? So that time is valuable. And that's why we're talking about this right now. Controlling thoughts begins with attention, focusing your attention on what you want it to focus on. So you have any other questions or comments? Yes?
You started mentioning
Obviously.
savoring unhappiness.
Oh, savoring.
And then you were going to mention a study, but kind of.
Yeah, so I was talking about pleasant thoughts. A lot of us are troubled by negative thinking, and it really takes enjoyment out of our lives. And we do have things to be like stressed about. my pops, my mom, my sister, my brother. There's a lot of things to be worried about. And focusing on the negative can really suck the joy out of life, whatever joy there actually is. And the best example I'm going to give you is the Prophet ﷺ. There is no one in this room that went through more trauma than him. But he was always seen smiling. He was always seen smiling. And so what I want to share with you is something I've learned that can boost happiness. And it's not like a hack. It's not like, oh, we need to always be happy. I'm talking about removing the negative thoughts so that we have positive thoughts and so that we are maintaining and maintaining the happiness that we do experience in our lives. And so this one study was talking about the concept of savoring the good moments of life. And what does that mean? Throughout today, there was something beautiful you experienced. It could anything, I don't know. Allow yourself to stop and to reflect and enjoy. Remember the feeling. Remember the physical feeling. Remember the emotional feeling. Remember, reflect on that moment that you savored. You were on the court schooling somebody. Really, like you made him look silly, yo. Feel me? I ain't a baller, I'll tell you right now. But you like schooled him. Like, and so just sit back and be like, yo, that was nice. No, seriously. Those beautiful moments, whatever they be, I was sitting with Qasim and he did something and I was like, yo, this is amazing. Savor that. So what it means is to go back and reflect on the beautiful moments throughout one's life. Brings happiness back. And what we end up doing is we end up actually focusing more on the negative than the positive, unfortunately. And this sucks a lot of enjoyment out of our life. And that's why they say, negative people around you, man, they suck the air out of the room, man. You gotta keep positive influences around you. And I'm not talking about people that live like in a way where it's not attached with reality, but people that push you to focus on the good instead of focus on the negative. And the more we begin to do that, inshallah, the more we're able. So the study was saying that guiding people to savor good moments can help bring back happiness in a person's life. Teaching them how to savor, which is like, yo, what was it like? Explain it to me. Tell me how you crossed it. What did the crowd do when you crossed? Like, no, seriously. He's going to be smiling. You feel me? Allah give us that, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us, give us the ability to focus our attention on things that will bring our khair in this dunya and the akhirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to recognize negative thinking and evil thoughts when they come and the ability to push them away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the awareness and cognizance of how we use our tongue and realize that this tongue can absolutely destroy us. Ya Allah, give us that reality in our hearts that we realize and give us the ability to control our speech, control our thoughts, and control our actions. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. جزاكم الله خير. ما شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير everyone. Allah give us tawfiq, inshallah. Amen.